The dawn of the 20th century was an exciting time for film as an art form. Artists all over the world were developing the medium far past the mere sideshow attraction that it was during its inception. Perhaps the most important developments made during this time period, however, would come from the works of Russian auteurs Sergei Eisenstein and Giga Vertov and their use of the montage. Russian montage theory would go on to not just shape the golden age of cinema, but also mark the beginning of modern filmmaking, and this is due largely in part to its full realization by Eisenstein and Vertov. To truly understand the influence of the theory, we must first understand what it is. In the 1920s, the theory was brought about by Eisenstein as an alternate method of editing film, opposed to the typical style used during the majority of the silent era, which was to demonstrate the scene in a static manner. While this worked fantastically for comedies from the likes of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, it caused film's progression as an art form to stagnate. Eisenstein hypothesized that, in the words of Ben Nichols, film editing techniques could be used to convey far more than the narrative. What this means is, for connecting images that on their own don't convey anything together, they can communicate an idea that we can gather ourselves. This theory would be a gigantic leap forward in storytelling through film, as via using the various methods of montage, you could tell complex stories utilizing only editing instead of telling the audience through text or communicating everything through a single shot. Eisenstein and his friendly rival Vertov would demonstrate the power of these techniques in much of their work. However, where I believe this is shown best is in the feature Battleship Potemkin and documentary Man with a Movie Camera. Starting with Eisenstein's own realization of his theory, Battleship Potemkin, made in 1925, is a propaganda film that tells the true story of the warship the movie is named after and the mutiny that took place on it in 1905. There are many montage sequences throughout the film, with the most famous by far being the Odessa Steps. In this scene, Tsar soldiers march down the steps and open fire on a defenseless crowd of civilians. The sheer chaos is conveyed through the many cuts to different people fleeing, close-ups that show horror, shock, fear, and death, the machine-like marching of soldiers, a mother being shot down with her dead son in her arms, and, most famously, a baby in a pram rolling down the steps amid the panic. How crucial this scene would end up being to modern filmmaking is shown by the many homages and even parodies of it that have been made in the years since the film's release. While Battleship Potemkin's influence is fairly obvious to see, Giga Vertov's Man with a Movie Camera's influence is more subtle despite being a vast showcase of what can truly be done through the theory of montage. Vertov made the documentary to show life as it was, as opposed to the propaganda films that were being produced at the time. The movie doesn't slander nor praise life in the Soviet Union, yet allows us to come to our own conclusions through the juxtaposition made possible through montage. An instance of this that stood out to me was the cutting between a woman having her hair done in a salon and another woman hard at work in far worse conditions. The film experiments not only with what can be done through montage, but also frame interpolation, stop-motion animation, Dutch angles, tracking shots, and much more. Many of these techniques shown throughout the documentary would have actually been invented and used for the first time by Vertov. It's because of this that, when watching, there's a feeling of excitement of what can be done through filmmaking and how life can be shown through a different perspective through the lens of the camera. Everything that makes up how films are made today can be traced back to these two films and the theory of montage. Yet, through looking back and analysing these classics, there's still so much to learn from the pioneers of these techniques.